Welcome back to Switch Movies, the show that went on hiatus and is now back, and it has been essentially rebooted. I don't like that word. I hate that word, and yet I'm rebooting things on my own channel. I don't like it. I don't like it at all. But I am joined by one of my new hosts for the new series of Switch Movies, and that is the amazing NightWatch of the NightWatch Zone. Welcome aboard.
Thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate it. This should be fun. We'll see where we go with this.
Oh, it's gonna be interesting. This dude is sometimes harassing me at all hours of the day and night. And so I just thought, that sounds like a good person to have as a co-host on a show about movies. Yeah.
There you go.
Because at least it's a firm indicator that they can talk.
Right.
There's one
Got to be able to
tip.
do that.
It is a key feature. It would be kind of weird if you just stood there silent the whole time.
Right. Yep.
Well, to those who have never tuned in before, maybe you've come from Knight's channel, which is cool. Hello, welcome aboard. How this works is during each episode, a theme is picked that either Knight will pick, I will pick, Al will and mutually agree on. And from that topic, we will each select a film that we have watched that the other person has not. We switch them, and then, of course, we get together to discuss both films today. Because it is Knight's first episode, I had him pick today's topic. Care to announce to the folks at home what topic you picked for today?
Well, I had to really think about what topic to do. And obviously, I've watched the previous series that you've done on these. And I was like, all right, well, what could I do? And I just said, I'm just going to go for it. And I went with gangster or mobster movies.
Mm-hmm. I was for some reason, not for some reason, it's kind of obvious. I was expecting something in the horror, feel. Like I was expecting that, and all of a sudden I just get, gangster movies. I'm like, interesting. Did not see that coming. And I will be the first to admit, gangster movies are not my wheelhouse. There's every pretty much popular or famous gangster movie that exists. You can pretty much guarantee I have not seen it.
Yeah, but I figured that would be what would be interesting, because that way, kind of get you into a new era, some new stuff, and see what you thought. Because look, I said to myself, yeah, obviously horror could be an easy choice or some subgenre or something like that. We both love horror so much. But I love a good gangster movie too. So,
The only challenge was, as soon as he said, I'm like, shit, what's a gangster movie I've seen that he potentially has? I'm like, I'm off for screwed here. But fortunately, it worked out, and within a few moments, we had knocked both our films out, and then just, of course, had to watch them and then come together to discuss them. So I thought we would kick this off with your choice. So please introduce the film that you picked for me to watch.
Oh man, look, this movie is just one of those movies. It's just one of those classic movies. I saw this movie as a kid with my parents. Yes, my parents watched gangster movies and let me watch them with them. And has one of my favorite actors ever. And so I just knew that this would be the movie I would choose. And the movie I chose was 1983's Scarface, starring the great Al Pacino.
Yeah, I mean, I know that's probably like movie sacrilege. It's like, yeah, I've never seen Scarface.
Right.
I know about it. I know Al Pacino. I know, of course, it's directed by Brian De Palma. Like, there's things that you just go about knowing. Screenplay by Oliver Stone. I, funny enough, did not know it was a remake. that part, I'm just like, wow, this shows how much I know. But so I
Right.
did not know that it was a remake of the 1932 film, which has the exact same title, which in turn is loosely based on the 1929 novel that is
Hmm.
inspired by Al Capone. So this all came about thanks to one Al Capone. But this film, of course, follows Al Pacino's character, Tony Montana, who is a Cuban refugee who arrives in Miami in the 1980s and becomes a powerful drug lord. That is really the crux of the story.
Yep.
And I don't know anybody who has, lived on planet Earth post 1983 and not grown up knowing that Scarface exists. Even if you haven't seen it, you know
Hmm.
about this film. So what is it that you love about this film? Because it's very clear that you love this film.
Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, there's the nostalgia of it,
Hmm.
watching it as a kid, and Al Pacino being, especially my mom, one of her favorite actors. And I think as a kid, when you get to see a movie, first of all, that's R-rated, it's kind of like it's a big thing,
Right, right.
And so there's the nostalgia factor. But all of that aside, especially as I grew up and when I became an adult, watching the movie, it was just a fascinating depiction, the rise and fall, of the character of Tony Montana and all the little angles that came with that. It's definitely over the top. It's 80s as hell, you know. But I just found it fascinating. I enjoyed his character. It's a fairly long movie. I believe it's like 2 hours and like 50 minutes long.
Hmm.
But when I watch it, or at least for me, it doesn't feel like a long movie. It feels it really feels like it's maybe just an hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes. And I think part of that, for me anyways, is because I just get so absorbed into his character and
Hmm.
all the decisions that he makes, some that are right, but many, many that are wrong decisions. And just seeing how that all plays out. And he's chasing the American dream. And you understand that. But the
Hmm.
way he goes about it is horribly wrong.
Right.
So, like I said, it's just a movie that intrigues me. And to this day, it's still a favorite of mine.
Well, that's great. I think it's very clear it's a favorite of a lot of people's.
Mm.
It's one of those films where every time people are having a, well, not every time, but so many times you hear a film discussion going on, and this film's going to probably pop up because it's always being referenced as iconic and a masterpiece. So, for that reason, I'm glad that I've finally had a chance to watch it. Thank you for that. I can now officially, instead of getting the side eye from people when I go, I haven't seen it, I can now go, I've seen it. Put the knives
Right,
down. It's okay.
right, right.
Um, but then they're gonna have to pick up an assault rifle, especially if they're American. Ooh, I went there. Um, because there's no delicate way for me to say this.
Be careful.
I do not scuff it. Rip off the band-aid. I hated it. Oh my god. Oh good lord. I wasn't sure what I was going to feel about this film. I thought that I'd at
Mhm,
least walk away having some kind of understanding of why it's called a masterpiece and why so many people love it. But I
mhm.
pretty much spent at least the last hour and a half of the movie kind of just screaming at the air going, what the fuck, why do people love this thing, what is happening here? I i was slowly going insane. It's so funny that you said that it's a 2 hour and 50-minute film and you're like, but it doesn't feel like that, whereas I was pretty much raging every 5 minutes going, oh my god, is this film not over yet, will it just end? For me, it was the slowest, most drawn out film I
Mhm.
think I've encountered in a very, very long time.
Mhm.
It felt never ending. It was crazy to me that the pace was so where we would go so long with absolutely nothing happening. And
Mhm.
I was so bored that I was considering like putting my hand into a fire just to wake myself up.
Come on.
I was genuinely
No,
falling.
you weren't.
I slept like a baby after watching this film. I was like, as soon as
Oh,
it's
well.
over, I didn't even need ASMR. I'm just like, nah, I'm good. I'm rolling over. And I was out like a light because
Mhm.
I stood the whole time. I was like, don't play with the phone. Don't play. I'm like, okay, I'm going to play. I'm just going to watch from the corner of my eye as I play on my phone here. Because I was genuinely nearly falling asleep watching this.
Mhm.
And we start off, and starting off, I thought the film was interesting, talking about uh crap, now I've forgotten the Cuban dictator's name, Castro.
Castro.
Talking about him, and I'm hoping that their information was correct about what he did with basically sending convicts over to
Yeah,
America. That was fucked up. I'm like, this is a really interesting fact. And I'm just like, I did
right.
not know that. And I thought that was really interesting. And then showing
Yeah,
footage of refugees coming into America, which the fact that there's anybody who can see footage like that and not have a response to it is shocking. But
right.
um and then of course we meet Al Pacino as Tony Montana, and my first reaction to him is like, okay, this should be interesting. Let's see how this goes. And then in the first few minutes, and I'm just like, they're asking him casual questions. Have you been a criminal? This. I'm like, yeah, these are
Right.
these are pretty basic questions. And they're like, are you a homosexual? I'm like,
Yeah, they went there. They
what?
did.
I'm like,
Mhm.
what's the relevancy here?
Right,
Do
right.
you like to dress in women's clothes? What the fuck? I'm like, no, 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 no. And then of course, he's going, then all the gay slurs come out. I'm like, oh goody, it's one of those. And of course,
Yeah,
gay slurs pop up a fair bit. And I'm just like, I can look at any older film from the eyes of back then. So I understand that obviously we're a little bit more, you know, sensitive and understanding that these things are not okay.
that's
But
right, right.
this was obviously back in a time where throwing gay slurs, or so many films, and to a degree this one where films are so openly homophobic,
Mhm.
um that was not just tolerated, it was welcomed, it was almost encouraged. So
Yeah,
I can understand nobody at the time blinking and going, that's a problem. Of course, me at the time, I still would have had a problem with it. But
right.
so I'm just looking at that, I'm like, oh, that's not aged well. um because I'm trying to even figure out, how do these comments even fit into the plot line, and
Yeah,
they
yeah,
don't. They're just there for
yeah,
the sake of being homophobic. I'm like, oh,
yeah.
this is uncomfortable.
Well, and I think it's also because that scene in particular, it is funny because, it's the first time that you meet Tony.
Mhm,
And I think it also was illustrating how, you know, the law looked at these immigrants that came over
mhm,
that had potential criminal records, which in that scene they pretty much knew that Tony Montana was a criminal. And
right.
it's almost like a prison mentality to kind of break the prisoner down verbally, to try to get what you want out of him, because they wanted
Mhm,
to know exactly what he did and kind of size him up that way, so they knew where to keep an eye on him at. And again, like you said, as a product of the time, because it's the 80s, and trying to have those, the bad cops, and what would they say to the bad guys,
right, right.
and it's almost like they have to be even more vulgar than a criminal would be.
Mhm.
But yeah, it definitely throws you for a little bit of a loop. It really, really does.
Yeah, it's the same with all of the I'll say colorism in the film, which is, today that's something that gets more addressed. But watching it, I was just like, how did some of these people get cast? Like, nothing against
Mhm.
Al Pacino. I entirely agree that
Right.
he's an amazing actor, but I'm still also laughing that an Italian is
Yeah.
playing a Cuban and
Yep.
trying to put on the accent and everything. And to be honest, I could not understand a word he was saying majority of the time. I was I was DMing a friend and she reminded me about how one of the things that is talked about a lot with this film is the number of times that Tony says fuck.
Right.
And when she said that, I realized I hadn't actually registered a single time he had said fuck because I couldn't understand anything he was saying. So
Come on, man.
I hadn't even noticed. I'm like, oh yeah, that's a thing. And as soon as she said it, I did start to notice it, especially when, Michelle Pfeiffer's character is like, oh my God, do you have to say fuck all the time? And I'm just like,
Right.
I'm like, well, she noticed it before I did, but then again, she lives with the dude, so you'd think that she should.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
and then of course we have Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio,
Yes.
who love her. I loved her in many films, but
Mm.
then I'm seeing she's cast to play his sister, and I'm
Mhm.
like, bitch is about as white as me, and she's also
Mhm.
Italian heritage. And I'm like, there ain't anything Cuban in her. She may have had a
Right.
Cuban in her, but
Yeah.
no, she's. I'm like,
Yes.
what the hell? I'm like, and then of course I look at the mother, who's very clearly Hispanic, and I'm just like, yeah, I can believe she's Cuban. She's got that
Mhm.
Cuban flair, that that Spanish heritage kind of attitude. And I'm like,
Mhm.
and she looks the ethnic part. Just like, and then you got this pasty white daughter
I
with
know.
the
I know.
tightest perm I have ever seen, by the way.
It was beautiful. It was
It was
crazy.
it was
We you
something.
no, I'd be for the 80s. But it's funny because Stephen Bauer, who played Manny, he was the only Cuban in the
Cuban.
main cast.
I know.
And I guess he worked with Pacino a lot to try to get some of the slang and the Cuban pronunciation, which, there are a lot of people who say it worked out okay, and a lot of people hated it. So I definitely get what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
But what's funny is that originally Al Pacino saw the remake and he thought about the possibilities. I'm sorry, he saw the original. He
Mm-hmm.
saw the possibilities of doing a remake, and he talked, to I think it was Martin Bergman, who's
Mm-hmm.
one of the producers.
Mm-hmm.
And originally Pacino wanted to play the lead, but originally they were going to cast Robert De Niro as
Oh,
Tony Montana. And
okay.
and and Robert De Niro actually was kind of like, no, well, let's just let Al do it. So either way, they were gonna have someone that was not the right ethnic background playing Antonio Montana, you know?
Which is, again, it's a product of the time. We
Absolutely.
we look at so many things that we had back then, of all, I look at the things and I'm just like, yep, that's 1983. I'm not even shocked by this. But it's
Hmm.
funny looking at it from the mindset of today, where we know about representation and inclusivity and about
Yeah.
proper proper representation of accurately casting ethnicities, unlike, going back to the days of having freaking John Wayne playing Genghis Khan.
Yes. Yep.
So it's, I mean, I could totally understand everything Stephen Bauer was saying. I'm like, yep, you look Cuban,
Hmm.
you are Cuban, and you sound Cuban. And guess what? I can also understand everything you're saying. Then Al Pacino pops on the scene, and I'm just like, subtitles. I need subtitles. And that was the funny part. I did turn on the subtitles as I'm
You did?
watching. I did.
Oh man.
This is where
Wow.
it gets funny, because obviously there are moments where sometimes they speak, most of the time they're speaking English, but sometimes it'll
Mhm.
be English, 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 couple Spanish words, English, English, English. And when they're speaking something in Spanish, and I'm like, but what are they saying? I want to know what they are saying. So I have
Right,
the
right.
subtitles on, and the subtitles are literally telling me, they're just like translating the English part that says something in Italian, says something in Spanish, then translate the English like, you motherfucker. I'm like, you had one job, subtitles, one
Right,
job to translate
right.
what they're saying. Like, even at one point when poor poor Tony's cousin, brother, pal, whoever he is, I can't remember, who's getting, hacked up with a chainsaw in the bathtub,
Mm-hmm.
which by the way was ripped off in Two Lava Two Lantula, and I only now understand that scene.
Nice.
I didn't understand that scene, and now I'm like, I get it now. Um,
Right.
yeah, that I have the subtitles on, and so when the Colombian is just like, hey, pendejo, and I'm like, well, cool, I know what that word means, but the
Mm-hmm.
subtitle literally just says pendejo. It did not translate it into English, and I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, you're gonna be like that, huh? Okay, cool,
Right.
great. This is like Spanish class. I gotta figure it out for myself. But then there
Right.
would be other times when Al Pacino is talking, and I'm like, what? So I've put the
Mm-hmm.
subtitles back on, and the fucking subtitle says, mutters unintelligibly. I'm like, oh, come on! To the point I'm just like, oh, I get it. The subtitles are basically telling me, and they're like, nah, bitch, I ain't got a clue what it's saying either. Like, you're on your own. I'm like,
You're shit out of luck, man.
God damn it. So, I
Yeah.
mean, that part was kind of entertaining, but I mean,
Yeah.
there are moments that are interesting, like, the whole
Mhm.
hacked up in the bathtub. That's interesting.
Yeah, that
Um,
was tense.
Omar, again, not Spanish, getting
Right?
hung out of a helicopter. Never seen that a death done like that before, so that was interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the fact that these moments are so sporadic, and we will go so long before
Mhm.
something happens, I everything is going in one ear and out the other. I'm not retaining anything because nothing is keeping me interested. And that's why I
Mhm.
was saying I was pretty much falling asleep, because it was just people sitting down and talking and not talking. It was
Not really talking.
I mean, it's kind of like watching, politicians speak. There's a lot of talking going on, but they're not actually saying anything. And I'm
Yeah.
just I'm
Yeah.
just kind of like, I'm like, oh wait, 10 minutes ago. Wait, what did they say? Wait, I have no idea what they just said. Wait, what? Oh shit! I'm like,
Oh
I'm sure what I'm
man.
like, I'm sure it wasn't that important. Get to the next scene. I'm like, oh, good, they're sitting and they're talking again. Yay! I've never seen 2 hours and 50 minutes of so many people just sitting and talking and saying actually absolutely nothing. And
Mm.
I'm sure other people disagree. Perfectly fine.
Mhm.
But for me, I was thinking I could sit down and watch a compilation video of just courtroom scenes from film and television, which is essentially just people talking.
Mhm.
And yet I could be so much more invested and riveted, because there's a flow, there's ups and downs, there's new information coming in, being argued, disputed. So the dialogue is enough to keep me interested. Whereas
Yeah.
all of this, and I'm just like, I'm really not that interested in the linguistics of cocaine smuggling. Like, I mean, that's all good and well, but there's really not a career path for me, so thanks. I mean, if you're interested in getting into the cocaine trade, then I suppose this is a good film for
Well,
educational purposes.
it's a good warning. It's definitely a good warning for it, because it's like, look, like they said in the movie, man, you gotta fly straight, and, keep your eye on the prize, and all that good stuff. Don't get high on your own supply and
Yeah.
all that shit.
Which nobody listens to. Why make it a rule if nobody's gonna listen to it? Like,
I
no
know,
no
man.
fucks were given.
It literally too, though, that whole idea. I mean, the foreshadowing of it was crazy, because that was really that's what the downfall was for Tony, is the fact that, he did dip into his supply. He did have altered, emotions, and he was drunk and high and all that, and did things that ultimately was his downfall.
I can I I can understand. I don't love the execution, but I can understand how his character went the way that it did.
Yeah.
It seems inevitable because
Yes.
you're already going into something and you know he's not good with authority. So you know that he's not going to be a yes man. He's,
Right.
even when we're seeing Frank have that conversation, he's like, and Omar's calling him a peasant, and Frank is
Hmm.
saying, but yeah, but if you have a guy like that, he'll break his back for you. And I'm like, you're an idiot. Because
Hmm.
anybody who has a brain who's watching this and goes, no, this is a man who has a hunger and a need and a drive, like you're talking about right now. Frank literally just said, basically, don't underestimate the other man's greed. And I'm like,
Right. Yeah.
you're
Good point.
doing that yourself, because
Yeah.
he has nothing, so he has nothing to lose.
Right.
So this is someone who doesn't want to, be working in kitchens and doing that stuff. He wants to be at the top of the food chain, and he'll do whatever it takes to get there. So
Right.
you
Right.
see that drive and ambition from the get-go. So
Hmm.
it's inevitable that he would eventually get to the top. But the thing is, he has no stability in his life. He is
Exactly.
on the outs with his own mother. He only has his sister, who is naive as shit.
Yep.
um he has a friend who is his confidant, and he is always trying to give him sound advice, but he don't want to hear it. Like,
Hmm.
how is the man not dead sooner in life? Like, yikes.
Right. Well, yeah, it showed that, like you said, his ambition, it just drove him, and he has that survival instinct
Hmm.
that did him well up to that point. But I think what was really sad is, once he attained, quote unquote, everything they wanted, like he said to Manny, he says, "I want the world, Chico, and everything in it." And I'm just like, yeah, okay. And he attained that. He had the woman of his dreams. He
Hmm.
had more money than he could count. And but then he has that scene at the restaurant where he realizes, is this it? Is this everything? Does this is this what I've worked for? And it's just a stark picture of how living in excess, it really doesn't give you what you truly think you want out of
Mm.
life. He and I think Michelle Pfeiffer, that scene was one of her strongest scenes, because she said the same type of thing. She says, "We're not winners, we're losers.
Hmm.
I don't have any friends, I don't have anybody. I've got a bodyguard as my best friend, and so forth and so forth." So it's kind of like, just that little bit of, that wisdom moment of, living like this, you think you're going to get everything you want,
Hmm.
but no, you're not. Especially if you don't have the right supports, if you don't, like you said, if you're on the outs with your family, if you're on the outs with your significant other, if you don't have friends, if you don't have something that stabilizes you, you're going to
Hmm.
end up just like Tony Montana.
Yeah, even from living in a world where he's, the communist, and he's got all those issues. So because
Right.
he's grown up in a society where trust is not a commodity you can afford to have. You can't really afford to put trust in other people. You can only trust yourself. And
Mm,
then he's gone and picked a career path that is so bad for somebody like him. Like, yeah, you're going to get money, you're going to get all those superficial things that you want.
mm-hmm.
But it's going to come with a lot of drawbacks that, for a person like you, are not going to go very well, such
Yeah.
as by the time that it doesn't even matter whether he's on drugs or not. Like, if he had been, not getting high on his own supply, and if he wasn't on freaking coke, I still believe he would have been absolutely paranoid, because
Yeah.
it's in his programming to distrust everyone and everything. But
Yep.
now, you are a big fish, so you already know that you are someone who has taken out the competition before you to get to where you are, so you know it's very
Mhm.
likely that someone's going to come and do that to you. So
Yeah.
there's no peace in his
Right.
life because he's
Yeah.
always having to look over his shoulder. But that's also a
Mhm.
circumstance that he created himself. He has nobody else to blame because
Mhm.
he did this.
Right.
He's had opportunity, just even I know they're in a tough situation, and obviously being an immigrant coming to America, your opportunities are very low. But there
Right.
are the people like his mother who is his opposite in every single way,
Mhm.
who she will not take dirty money. She would rather break her back, work till her fingers bleed, because then at least she's earned something that is good. She's worked for it and it's honest.
Right.
And that means more to her. But and she basically points it out, he'll take the easy way out.
Right.
It's like,
Yep.
oh, yeah, I'll kill someone. It's like,
Yep.
cool, cool, you're the big man, you shot someone, whoop-de-doo. Like both
Yep.
her and Elvira, they have that common, just like, yeah, wow, you kill people for a living, you're so impressive.
Right. Yeah.
you know
Absolutely.
Basically throwing that back, that and his paranoia in his line of work is not unrational. It's quite expected. I probably think that there was something wrong with him if he wasn't paranoid about his life. And the fact that by the end
Right.
of it, there is literally an army of Latinos coming to kill him. I'd say that paranoia was well placed. It just
Yeah.
didn't mean jack shit by that point.
Right. Yeah. Well, like he said to Manny when they were checking the video camera and saw the trucks outside of the house, and
Mm.
he says maybe that's the Diaz brothers coming to get him, and Manny's like, we're not the only dopers on the block. That's just a cable truck, and and Tony is like, you're supposed to be my security guard. We got to keep an eye out for stuff. So he definitely was paranoid, but I think that that's a trope that you find a lot of times in these gangster or mobster movies because
Mm-hmm.
there's always a double cross, sometimes a
Yeah.
triple cross.
Mm.
So that definitely played big time into this movie. And unfortunately, like you said, by the end of it, it's kind of like, yeah, it really did happen, So, poor
Yeah.
guy.
It's an unfortunate um story. I will say one thing that I did actually love was I love the interior of his house. Whoever did that set, oh my god, amazing. I'm like, I would
Yeah.
live there. I'm like,
Yeah, it was a cool set.
I'm possibly okay with marrying a drug lord if it means I get to live in a house like that. I can understand Elvira's
Get out.
choice. I'm now understanding where ideas for the Hangover and the Tiger came from. Like, goddamn.
Yes.
Like,
Yep.
I'm just like,
Absolutely.
that wasn't an original idea. Y'all stole that. Okay. Like
Yep.
but that's kind of one of the thing that's interesting, that as I'm watching this film,
Mhm.
I can now see all these other films that I've already seen. I can see moments in them that took inspiration from this. And that part, whether I like this film or not, makes it interesting to just see how much it has influenced everything that kind of came after it. Even if it's a friggin' dumb ass sci-fi channel ridiculous film like To Lava, To Lantula, like that is the reach of this film. That is how far it has made it. And I just think that so much was dragged out. It's taking a very long time to tell an obvious story. I
Mhm.
think it could have been condensed more, or at least had more levels to it so that it didn't
Mhm.
feel as long for me. um
Yep.
but only because, yeah, it is inevitable. Like, as soon as you meet him, you know where the story is gonna go. Like, nobody in that
Yeah.
life has a happily ever after.
Right.
It doesn't happen. It's basically going to be non-stop. One person gets killed, next person takes their place, that person gets killed, they take, that's just going to be how it's going to continue to stay that way. But there are
Right.
interesting moments. and then a
Hmm.
really random musical montage, and I'm just like, where the fuck did that come from?
Yeah, man, it's totally 80s. Kicks ass.
Don't get me wrong, I love the song. I was just like, this feels so random right now. Even this song, I'm
Right.
like, I love the song. Don't get me wrong. I'm just like, what? Like, because
Yeah.
especially when you're kind of like zoned out and you're not paying attention, then this happens. I'm like, oh, what? Like, was I asleep? What? No, I
Right.
wasn't. This is like, am I watching the same movie? Oh, I am. Okay, cool, cool, cool,
Right.
cool,
Right.
cool. Got you, got you, got you. It's crazy to think that both Brian De Palma and Al Pacino were against Michelle Pfeiffer being cast in this movie. I can to a degree I can understand that because she was unknown at the time,
Yeah.
and if you have a big name like Al Pacino even back then, you essentially would kind of probably want an actress who is of equally known status playing opposite
Hmm.
him. But the fact that they took a risk, I don't think it was her best performance. I think that there were moments where she, especially in the fight in the restaurant, where I felt she could have really amped it up an extra few notches, because I'm like, you've been through a lot. I'm like,
Right.
there's more emotion there that you are not letting out. Like, this should be like, freaking Pompeii right now. And I'm like, you're not giving me Pompeii. So I'm like,
Uh,
everything she's saying, I'm like, yeah, it feels right that she's saying these things. I
yeah.
wanted a bit more intensity, but I think it's great that they took a chance and they cast her,
Yeah.
because she proved that she had chops and talent then. If you're willing to nurture it, she can go
Yeah.
far. And she has. And so we've seen that you can watch later films of hers and then compare them to this. And it's like, wow, she's actually really grown, and she can now. I mean, if we cast the Michelle Pfeiffer of now in Scarface,
Right.
the level she would be hitting in that film
Yeah.
would be insane, to the fact that I think that to a degree she'd probably outshine Pacino, because
Yeah. Yeah.
she's had the years, she's had the experience, so she knows how to really deliver. And I can kind of see that. I like I can try to think what it must have been like for her. Like, you're unknown, you're trying to prove yourself, but you're also trying to prove yourself to a bunch of people who from the get-go have pretty much thought you're nothing and you don't have what it takes. I'm like, oh my god, the
Right.
stress.
Right. 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 Yeah. I think I heard that they had a couple other actresses that they were thinking of, like Gina Davis and Sigourney Weaver. I think Glenn Close was the first choice that they wanted, and that wasn't,
Ooh.
so it was a couple people ahead of her that had more obviously experience and a bigger name. So, but
Right.
yeah, I agree with you. Good for her. She jumped in there and she tried to do what she could with what she had. The character wasn't a very, well written character by any means, which is too bad because, like you said, I love her as an actress, and maybe if
Mm-hmm.
the character had more meat on the bone, so to
Mm-hmm.
speak, it could have really showed what she would eventually become as an actress, but
Yeah.
also uplift the story a bit more, because I thought that
Mm.
her character was pretty weak. But again, that was also a sign of the times, in the early 80s. If you had an actress playing the wife of the main character, usually they were just kind of in the background, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I
but
I
yeah,
just
I love Michelle Pfeiffer as an actress, though.
Oh, me too, without a doubt. I
Hmm.
just I just think that there were some moments in her dialogue, especially when she's mocking Frank, that's like saying even like the guy in his little league could potentially kill him. I
Yeah.
think that there was just something that a little extra that could have been put into the delivery that kind of
Hmm.
made that a line that really sticks with you, because it's actually a really good line. And
Yeah.
if there was just a little bit more in the delivery of it, that
Hmm.
line I think could have potentially like stolen the scene. And
Yeah.
so yeah, I think if the Michelle Pfeiffer of now was doing that, that probably like nearly 3 hours later, I would have walked away and gone like, man, that was such a good line. Like,
Right.
like that. But live and learn. And the fact that this film really did open a lot of doors for her. And now we
Yeah.
have the Michelle Pfeiffer of now. And I think that that's awesome that any film is capable of doing that. So thank you, Jerks, for finally casting her. That's very nice of you. My word. So
Yep.
my question to you is, out of 5, what would you rate this film?
Ooh, oh, that's a good question. I mean, for
Mm.
me, again, it's just a movie that I've always enjoyed for so many years. So I
Mhm.
definitely would give it a 4.5
Wow,
out of
okay.
5 for me. I would. I love this movie. So
What is
there's
it
no
that's
hiding that.
what is it that's preventing a straight up 5 out of 5?
Well, I think for me, a 5 out of 5 is a perfect movie.
Right.
And there's only a couple movies that I would even think could get that.
Mhm.
Um, I think with this movie, as much as I love it, kind of like what we said, there were a couple of characters that weren't really, like I said, Michelle Pfeiffer's character, there was really not much there. I think that, some of the other things about the movie, as far as just the casting and stuff like that was kind of like, again, sign of the times. But
Right.
there were just a few things like that threw me out. There was a couple characters in the movie too that, like Chi Chi, some
Mhm.
of Tony's friends, they were just kind of like, all right, they just didn't really do that much for me. I was really there for Tony, for Manny, his relationship with Gina and how that would ultimately be part of his downfall,
Yeah.
and that type of stuff. So I give it a 4.5 out of 5.
That's still a very high rating. For me, um, well, let's say this personal opinion, but I'm gonna try and be slightly generous simply because I can acknowledge its influences on everything that has literally come after it. Like even right now, I'm thinking about Rush Hour 3. I know
Mm,
that's so random, but the scene where they're in France and the gangsters are getting ready to shoot up, I'm like, now that I'm thinking about it, I'm like, that's pretty much the scene from Scarface. Like,
right?
like,
Oh yeah.
damn, even Rush Hour 3 took from Scarface. Okay, cool. Okay, I see you all now. The
It's
whole world
very
has just
influential.
like the whole
I'm
world has just opened up before me. So
it's been a big influence on hip hop and music, and yeah, it's crazy. Music videos. I mean, it definitely has touched a lot of different parts of entertainment.
it has. I'm gonna give it. Oh, I'm gonna be so hated. 1.5 out of 5.
Come on. Jeez.
I'm sorry. I was genuinely so bored.
I
I'm
tell you,
sorry. I am sorry. I am sorry.
it happens. It happens.
I mean, I was hoping for a little bit more. I mean, the I can at least definitely say like the hype around this film did not influence or make me end up like hating it, because despite
Good.
everybody talking about it for so many years, there was never really any information or details about the film being talked about when I've heard it
Mhm.
mentioned. At
Yeah.
most, I've, seen that clip of say hello to my little friend like a million times, but I'm like,
Yeah.
that doesn't really tell me anything about the film. So I went
Right.
in completely blind.
Yeah.
So my opinion is pretty much untouched. And yeah, bring on the hate and the dislikes. Me no likey. I'm sorry. And this is the part where now everybody goes to, I'm going to unsubscribe and I'm never listening to your film opinion again because you are stupid.
No.
Oh, it gonna
No.
happen. It gonna
Uh,
happen. But I
I
really
tell
don't
you.
care. I don't care.
Yeah.
But that brings us over to film number dos, which was my choice because I'm like, oh my god, what the fuck do I pick? I don't really watch gangster movies, which is not because I don't like gangster movies. It's just like I haven't really come across that many that I've watched. So I end up the first thing that popped into my head was The Kitchen from 2019, which is written and directed by Andrea Berloff. So we've got also female director. Yay! And
Woohoo.
this was also her directorial debut. Now, this film is actually based on the DC Vertigo Comics limited series, also called The Kitchen, and
Hmm.
it basically follows three wives of Irish mobsters who take over organized crime in New York's Hell's Kitchen in the 1970s after their husbands are arrested by the FBI. Yeah, so this one I was very interested to hear your take on it because when this film came out, it was pretty much panned and hated by almost everybody. Like this got a
Mm.
lot of negative critiques. Um, I did notice that more commonly, not all, there were some women who didn't like it, but mostly it was men who didn't like it. And I thought that that was kind of an interesting thing. So I just was wondering. So I was very interested. I'm like, oh, what's Knight gonna say? This is gonna be
Yeah, put me on the hot seat. I see how you are. Yeah.
Yes, if
All
you
right.
hated this film, you're sexist. It's very obvious.
Right? Yeah, and then people start unsubscribing from my channel. Okay. Gonna get a balance out. No, no, no. Um no, yeah, I hadn't seen this movie, obviously. And but I had heard about it.
Mm,
And it was one of those movies. I do, like I said, I do love gangster movies, mobster movies, and this was a movie that I was planning on seeing, but and I know you know this as well as anyone. Sometimes you just don't get to that movie.
yeah.
You don't get a chance to see it, and time goes by, and you
Mhm.
just you just don't see it. Um, but I thought it was really interesting. I really did. The leads in the movie, Melissa McCarthy. I'm a fan of Melissa McCarthy, and
Yay.
first of all, having her in a gangster movie like this was kind of like, wow, that's pretty darn cool and pretty courageous for her to get out of her comfort zone as far as what has made her a star,
Yeah.
what has made her viable as a leading actress and so forth. So that intrigued me, when I
Mm.
started to watch this. Tiffany Haddish, I think she's funny. I've liked some of her movies, and some of her other movies I'm just kind of like, how some comedians, they work for you and sometimes they don't.
Yeah.
She's one of those comedians that some of her stuff I find really good and some of her stuff is like, all right, whatever.
Yeah.
Elizabeth Moss, I absolutely adore that woman. Like, in my eyes, and I'm not trying to sound weird, I'm just being real, in my eyes, she can do no wrong. I absolutely, no, all seriousness, I think she's a
Mhm.
fantastic actress. I think um, she does a lot of different roles. She's very versatile,
Mhm.
in the stuff that I've seen her in, whether it's, just these characters that have these little intricate ways about them, how they do things, how they perceive the world, what they do about it. Some that are helpless
Mhm.
to some degree, and some that are very badass.
Mhm.
So I love Elizabeth Moss. But anyways, um, well, I might as well get to the main thing. I enjoyed the film. Um, I enjoyed it, and it was kind of funny because I had heard about the criticisms
Mhm.
of the movie. Nothing specific as far as giving away plot of the movie,
Mhm.
but I had heard that it was, criticized that it didn't do too well in the theater. I can't remember what the budget was, but I think it only grossed a few million more than the budget or something like
Not
that.
even. It had a budget of 38 million. It only made 16 million at the box office.
Oof,
Mhm.
jeez.
Box
Yeah,
office
so
bomb.
yeah, unfortunately. And but anyways, but let me just say this. Melissa McCarthy, I was sold. I mean, pretty much right from the beginning of the movie, I was just like, wow,
Hmm.
this lady is fantastic in this role. I don't know what it was. It could have been the script. Well, I'm sure it was a combination of these things, but the way her character was written,
Hmm.
it seemed very real.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like it really seemed like, this is someone that you could really be you could believe in.
Hmm.
And the way she portrayed it, I loved it. I thought it was such a good portrayal. I loved her character. Elizabeth Moss, geez, right from the opening scene, I just felt for her. I was so pissed that she was in such an abusive marriage, and I just wanted to just go through the screen and grab her husband and kick the shit out of him. and and the way she portrayed that abused person,
Hmm.
it was a little heartbreaking, in the beginning of the movie, of course. Tiffany Haddish, again, and I'll just throw this out here. Out of the three, Tiffany Haddish, I liked the least.
Okay.
Now, I think part of it was maybe the way her character was written. I think part of it might have been the way she played it.
Hmm.
And then, of course, as we find out I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but as we find out at the end with the twist, she basically orchestrated, things,
Yeah.
which pissed me off, when I got to the end of the movie. So maybe that was the game plan, to have her
Hmm.
as a character that you're always on the edge of hating, and then,
Hmm.
at the end you find out why. But but she was a strong character, and
Right.
I appreciated that. um and these women, they had to do what they had to do, because their husbands were sent away to jail. So like I said, I enjoyed the movie. I don't understand, a lot of the criticisms of it. The
Hmm.
only thing, and I'm jumping ahead a little bit, so reel me in if you have to.
Go for it.
One of the only things that I did have an issue with. And we've got Domhnall Gleeson,
Hmm.
who's co-starring in it. I love him, by the way, and he's done a lot of different roles too.
Right.
He's a very talented actor. I mean, he was great in Ex Machina. He was kind of cringy in the Star Wars sequels. He's been in Peter Rabbit. I mean, this he's been in Black Mirror. I mean, this guy can do anything.
Right.
And I gotta admit, he was believable in this movie as this loose cannon, kind of gangster hitman type of guy.
Hmm.
Very believable. But the only thing about it is, when they introduced his character, he came in at a point where um, Elizabeth Moss's character Claire was being sexually assaulted in the alley,
Hmm.
and it's kind of like he just shows up and shoots the guy, and she's like, Gabriel. And it was kind of like that was his introduction. I'm like, wait a minute, was something cut out? And I don't know anything about that part of the movie or the filmmaking. There could have been some scenes that were cut out for whatever reason, but it just seemed kind of it just seemed kind of just that didn't work for me, how he just showed up. But I did enjoy his character
Hmm.
through the movie. He was very, very good. um the husbands, they were fine. James Badge Dale, who was Tiffany Haddish's husband, he had some slimy scenes. He played his role very
Hmm.
well. But I also enjoyed um, Tiffany Haddish's mother-in-law.
Yeah.
She was she was the kingpin, or I guess I should say the queen pin. I
Hmm.
mean, damn. I mean, she was running the show,
Yeah.
as the matriarch of this mob. It's like, wow. She Every time she talked, I was even more engaged, because she just had that gravitas, that charisma, and she was badass in her scenes. She was a good character as well. So yeah, I enjoyed the movie. I don't understand the criticisms. Um, I think the storyline was pretty good. I thought it seemed like a couple things were cut. or maybe cut away a little bit as far as deleted scenes. Like I said,
Mhm.
Gabriel's introduction, but yeah, I enjoyed it. I really, really did. Those
I
women, they kicked ass in the movie. They really did.
I think with Gabriel's introduction, the following scene, I think because there's a kind of the conversation is kind of more focused on what's just happened, that we don't actually notice the part in the conversation where Tiffany Haddish's character is basically saying she's pretty much recruited him to work for them, that's
Hmm.
why. And I mean, he says that the only reason he came back was for Claire, that he's always
For
liked
Claire.
her, which I think is really sweet. But
Hmm.
yeah, she's just like, we need someone like him, that is why I have called him, that is why he is here.
Yeah.
And so it's like, well, thank you for explaining why this person has randomly showed up. It's just basically like he was there and he was watching things and he acted at the right time. But
Right.
yeah, because of the conversation, kind of focusing a little bit more on like, holy shit, he's back versus who is he, why is he here?
Right.
Yeah, I think that maybe that kind of gets a little bit lost, just maybe a little bit more in the delivery, especially because I think as she was saying it, I don't know if they were actually even looking at Tiffany Haddish on screen at the time. I don't think the camera was on her as she was saying it, so you could probably maybe not be paying attention to what she's saying. I
Right.
mean, it's
Right.
very easy to
Yep.
do that if you're not looking at the person on the screen. But
Right.
this film was, we don't have it anymore, but I'm hoping it comes back. We had an event at my cinema called Flicks with the Chicks, and it would happen once a month. We'd get a like 1 to 2 day, or maybe sometimes a week, advanced screening of a film that would be selected and would come with yay goodie bags. It was so much fun. Um, and every time they would pick a film, and most of the, and it's meant to be things that are targeting a female audience. Guys can go too, there's no saying it's just like this is something for the ladies.
Right.
And
Right.
up until that point, I'd been going to this thing for a year, maybe a little bit more, a little bit less. And
Hmm.
the films were always kind of basically rom-coms or just straight up comedies. I mean, we had films like What Men Want, The
Hmm.
Spy Who Dumped Me, I Feel Pretty, things like that.
Yeah.
We even had Love, Simon, which I was just like, not sure how that's targeted to a female audience, but I'll take it
Right.
because I loved
Right.
it because it was a great film. But I'm just like, it's a weird choice. But I'm like, maybe it's because they think they can't target it to straight men. But they're like, yeah,
Hmm.
but women are a bit more open minded. Not wrong there.
Right.
Um, and then the day came where I'd seen the trailers for this, and I'm just like, ooh, this looks really interesting. I want to go see this. And then I saw it was selected for Flicks with the Chicks. And I'm just like, thank you, Jesus. Yes. Because I'm someone who, as much as I love comedies and stuff, rom-coms, not necessarily my thing, but fortunately the ones that were always picked for this event, I ended up really liking, except for I Feel Pretty. That film can fuck off. Um, Nearly walked out of that
Oh,
one. I nearly walked out.
poor Amy Schumer.
Schumer can look at. Anyway, um, I was just so excited because I want stories where I get to see women being strong and badass, but that does not necessarily mean that they're also not feminine at the same time. I
Right. Right.
wanted to see women in tough roles. I'm like, I would have loved to see something like Atomic Blonde, whether the film's good or bad. I would have liked to see something like that selected for this event because I'm like,
Hmm.
why does it have to be all the romance shit? My fucking God, just change
Yeah,
it up a little bit. I'm like, we can be more than one thing here. Like, it's
that's right.
amazing that you're
I
targeting
agree.
a female audience, but you're only giving us one type of film. And I'm like, and they ain't even the type that I like.
And it's a
So,
stereotypical way of going about it because
yeah.
that's kind of a stereotype that, oh well, women are the only ones that love rom-coms and this and that. And it's like, no, you guys can like anything you want. There are
Mm-hmm.
guys that like rom-coms. I've loved some rom-coms. You know, it's not my favorite genre, but I've seen a lot of rom-coms. Hello to Meg Ryan and Tom Hanks and, you know, all those things. The Notebook, you know, they were good movies, you know, so.
Yeah, so when this one was picked, I was really excited. I was just like, it's finally, it's happened. I'm having my moment. And
Mhm.
then I saw early reviews coming out and they were just saying it's a huge miss, it's shit, the performances are bad, like
Yeah.
Melissa McCarthy should not have been cast in this, she should stick to comedy. And
Really?
yeah, and I was just like, damn. I'm like, I don't listen to you people anyway. And then I watched it and
Yeah.
I left and I'm like, I loved it so much. Like I genuinely loved it. And there were a couple of times where I laughed because it's not like it's being overtly funny. It's
Mhm.
situational comedy where it's just like, yeah,
Right.
if I was living that moment, I would have laughed because it's just like that just happened. Um,
Yep.
and I loved it because even with the time that it is set in, it was
Mhm.
still so very relevant. And
Yes.
I think that there is going to be women who would watch this, and maybe even some men who can identify with at least one of these women, and
Mhm.
some who could probably even identify with all three,
Yeah.
because they are each such distinct characters. They there's nothing similar to them at all. Elizabeth
Right.
Moss is great, but of course I'm looking at this and I'm like, oh man, she's playing this kind of role again. Like I'm
Mm.
like, it's The Handmaid's Tale, it's The
Yep.
Kitchen, it's Invisible Man.
Visible Man.
I'm like,
Yep.
can this woman just stop getting her ass beat? God damn. I'm like, rise up, Elizabeth Moss. Rise up, fight back. Um, so I was kind of laughing and I'm like, of course she was playing this character. Like, who else would you
Mhm.
pick to play an
Yep.
abused wife? Like, she's like the go-to for that role.
Yep.
But she does it really well, and it's
Yes.
great seeing the complete evolution of her character, where we see
Yes.
it's not just her husband who she cops abuse from, it's strangers, and then she says like
Yep.
she's been getting this her whole life, that
Mhm.
it's like people just sense in her that they look at her and they know that they can beat her, and she's like, I'm not doing this anymore.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Yep.
I love that it's not it's these two women that kind of give her a newfound purpose in
Mhm.
life, but then it's also Domhnall Gleeson who comes along and just I don't even think it's
He
kind of
becomes
like
her
he
Yoda.
in a really messed up way. I don't think it's like maybe someone could look at it and be like, "Oh, of course, the man had to save her." He did technically save her. This is true,
Right.
but in this, I don't think there was ever, outside of that one moment, he didn't act like somebody who had to be her bodyguard. He didn't
Right.
act like it was his job to save her the entire
Yes.
film. He,
Good
even
point.
in that moment, he wasn't like being overly protective. It was kind of like, well, what else would I do? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's like,
No,
well,
I
what
agree
is,
with that.
he kind of, he was at her side. He
Yes.
wasn't doing anything. He was
Above
at her
her.
side the whole time because he genuinely cared for her deeply, and he
Yeah.
was
Good point.
nurturing and supportive. And if
Mhm.
there was something she wanted, he was just kind of along for the ride and encouraging her and just letting her find her footing and do her own thing. And it's
Mhm.
just like, hey, this what you want to do? I'm down. And he wasn't calling the shots. They were just kind of living, and he was
Yeah.
letting her live. And
Mhm.
obviously, I think that's a lot of what attracted her to him, because it's like, how did she go from one violent man to another? It's like, yeah, but he never hurt her. He
Right.
never ever laid a
Right.
hand on her. And
Right.
anything he did, he didn't talk down to her, he didn't disrespect her. He was so very nurturing.
Mhm.
towards her. Like you would almost,
Yeah.
if you didn't see any scenes of him killing and dismembering people and you only saw
Right.
scenes of them together, you'd be like, oh, he's so
He's the
sweet.
sweetest guy ever.
Exactly. So I think that that was really great that they gave her, in a really weird way, a healthy relationship.
Right. Yeah, she was transformed. I mean, that scene where, Tiffany Haddish had said something contradictory about him, and they walked outside, and she said, don't ever threaten Gabriel again. And she just, the way she said it, Elizabeth Moss, the way she said it, her body language and even her face, it's like this woman she has attained the top of the world, kind of like
Mhm.
what we were talking about with Tony Montana. She's gotten to the top, and now she can call the shots.
Mhm.
It's all about, it was like, believe it and it'll be. She believed in
Mm.
herself finally. She had that confidence and she exuded it. And like you said, Donald Gleason's character, Gabriel, he was just he was on the side of it saying, hey, whatever you want to do, I'm cool. He never looked down to her.
Mhm.
If anything, he was always building her up, which I thought, yeah, I agree with you. That was a great point.
Yeah, because there are some roles you watch, and whether it's like it's the male savior, it's the white savior, it's always that other person where it's like you could not have succeeded or gotten far without this person doing everything, and
Right.
that wasn't the case here. He gave her a safety net, a safe environment, and just someone to be there and love her, and that was literally all she needed in order
Hmm.
for her to just live and be herself.
Yep.
And it says a lot that that's really all that it takes. If you have a strong person to just love you and care for you, you can do anything knowing that you have that support, to the point where it's like she became completely fearless. Someone who was so broken and scared, and if her husband came by, it's flinching just at his mere presence, to
Hmm.
it's like, yeah, we got to go to a mob meeting in Brooklyn, and she's like, that sounds like fun, what do we wear to that? Like,
Right.
that
Right.
excitement she suddenly had for life, it was just such a complete shift from how she began. And it's sad how her story went. It seems like
Oh
inevitable that
yeah.
it would be to her, but still I'm just like, no,
I
no,
know. That was that.
no, kill Tiffany Haddish instead.
Right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that scene where it all came to a head for Claire, it caught me off guard. I actually gasped. I was like,
Mm,
oh, I just, it was tragic, man. And again, Donald Gleason, he's such a great actor because, his emotion in that scene,
mm,
you felt it, and the story earned that emotion, because like you said, he treated her very well, and you could tell he really did have feelings. He did love her.
yeah.
So kudos to the movie for making that work. That was very, very good.
Yeah. Tiffany Haddish's character she's not likable, but
Right.
the thing, at least with her, is you kind of get from the jump she's not meant to be that.
Right.
And it speaks, you can understand her character, like her or not, like when you're watching one of my favorite actresses, Marsha Gay Harden in The Mist. You hate that
Yes.
character. Good Lord, you hate her. But I
Yeah, you
love that
do.
actress so much. And I'm like, I'm
Absolutely.
impressed that you were able to make me hate you, because I don't hate
Yes.
you. But God, I hated
Right.
you in that film.
Right. Right. Right.
And I love that we have that moment with her character talking to her mom, and she's just like, is that why you beat me when I did
Beat
something?
me.
She's like, I had to beat the softness out of you. I'm like,
Yep.
this is why she is the way she is. She has
Yep.
been raised from the jump to know, don't show weakness, don't be soft. Basically, don't be yourself, and that you
Right.
have to be cutthroat to get where you want to be. And
Yep.
it, up until a point, it has worked for her. We do find
Yeah.
out that she has literally orchestrated everything. And I think the moment that puts that into perspective, if people weren't paying attention, is that when they're being watched by the FBI, and it turns out she's screwing one of them. Um,
Hmm.
and one guy is just like, "Oh, look at her leaving her mother-in-law's funeral." It's like, obviously she's screwing one of the Irish guys, and the guy she's actually screwing, he looks at her, and
Yeah.
it's not in a way of him getting jealous that somebody would
Hmm.
state that, because he can't say that he's with her. It was him stating a full-on fact, and he's just like, look at her. He's like, no man is gonna want to touch her,
Hmm.
because even if she's got to tackle the first hurdle of everybody's racist. She's black
Yep.
in a time where that was not okay.
Right.
And she's married a white man. That's two strikes.
Right.
And she's come into a community that is very tight knit, it's
Hmm.
very exclusive, and
Yep.
it's either you are born into it or you're married into it, and they don't
Hmm.
accept outsiders. So,
Right.
being that she's married into it, she's tolerated. That is all she is. She is not
Right.
welcomed because she's black. She's tolerated because she married it, and that in their community does mean something, but that doesn't mean they
Yes.
have to like it. And she
Yep.
knows that. Like,
Hmm.
she knows her husband was cheating on her. She's like, I don't give a shit, because I don't give a shit about any of you.
Right.
And that becomes her downfall at the end. The reason why at the end, when there's that little bit of a standoff, it's because she has no ties. She hasn't, because of her upbringing, she hasn't learned to make loyal friends and connections within the community, which I know is already going to be hard because she's being judged by the color of her skin, but it wasn't impossible,
Right.
because there is that sense of loyalty by marriage. She could have earned it, and
Yes.
that was not an option for her. Whereas we
Yeah.
have Melissa McCarthy's character, who she's born of it. She didn't marry into it. This is her blood. This is her
Right.
family. So they were
Hmm.
naturally all rallying behind her because their allegiance is to their own. But I like that they had that moment where it's like, you see, I have loyalty because I don't treat people like shit.
Right.
And she's like,
Yeah.
but you
Yeah.
stabbed everybody in the back, even me, but I'm giving you a second chance because I'm not you. And that's
Right.
kind of something I think you can only see in a film written and led by women. You can't really see that in a guy film. They're not going to have a sit down at the end where it's like, let's just casually talk about this, Can we
Right.
come to an
Right.
understanding? No,
Right.
knives, guns are going to be pulled, bombs are going to be set off. Like that's usually how it goes. But these
Right.
two women are like, we can duke it out,
Hmm.
and you're probably going to end up dead, not me, because I got the group,
Right.
but I don't want
But then
to
what?
do that. Like,
Yeah.
it doesn't get us anywhere. So I'm like, it's like,
Yeah.
if we work together, because we have our own strengths, if we use that, we'll be fine. And they both have enough common sense to go, okay, we'll lay down our weapons and we'll do the smart thing. And
Right.
it, it's, Tiffany Haddish does get to be that mastermind. It does make sense for her to be that because she's the one nobody's paying attention to.
Yeah.
Nobody is going to look or care about her, so she can do and get away with anything. So
Right.
that's
Right.
very smart, and that is can be said of so many women. This seems off topic, but it's relating the fact that for so many years female people didn't even think female serial killers existed, and so many of them got away with it for the simple reason that
Hmm.
police and people were 100% of the belief that women don't commit crimes, that
Right.
women don't kill people. You're stupid.
Hmm.
It's like, no, we do. We get away with it a lot better than you do. Ha ha ha. We don't
Yep.
get caught.
Exactly.
Um, and that's this. So she's got that part being a woman. Then she's got the added, which I like that this film kind of takes her for a lot of these characters, takes them being a woman and being ignored by society and uses it as a weapon. I
Hmm.
love that. And then, of course, with her, she gets to not only use the fact that she's a woman as a weapon, but the fact that she's a black woman as a weapon to like become like this shield of invisibility. Like
Hmm.
when it gets to the point where that's reveal, I'm like, damn, I didn't even put that
Right.
together. I
I know.
didn't. I'm like, y'all got me. Okay. That's rare, but you
Yep.
got me. And so
And it's
yeah, I like that.
well, and it's funny too because in the movie, right from the beginning, in that scene that they call back to at the end, you know, she says, well, you're the smart one, you know, saying it to Melissa McCarthy. And throughout
Mm-hmm.
the most of the movie, Melissa McCarthy was portrayed as the smartest of them, smart in the sense that she could kind of just figure things out and make
Mm-hmm.
things work. But, you know, it was really Tiffany Haddish who is a step ahead of everyone, you know, like you said, orchestrating the whole thing. So I think character wise, that was pretty interesting. And like you
Mm-hmm.
said, it came out of nowhere. It was a great twist to the movie, because when I saw it, I was like, what? Are you serious? You know, I mean, you know, but she really, because of her background and not being able to trust anyone or have those healthy relationships with anyone,
Mm-hmm.
she was willing to not only put her husband in jail, but her friend's husband in jail,
Mm-hmm.
because Melissa McCarthy said, you know, you sent Jimmy to prison and yada yada yada. And like you said at the end with the standoff, you had two women who did what they had to do, both strong, but two different ways that they go about it. You know, Tiffany Haddish, cutthroat to any and everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Melissa McCarthy doing what she has to do, but she wants to have people with her. She wants to help people if she can. She wants to try to have some sense of honor
Mm-hmm.
in her business dealings. You know what I'm saying? So it's interesting that those two made it to the end and they decided to work together. And of course, the first thing I thought about was, I wonder where it would go, you know,
Mm-hmm.
with these two characters. Because as we know, you know, these tropes in gangster films, like you said earlier, it usually doesn't end very well, you know. And in this movie, some of the twists that happen, like with that character Colin, the young
Mm.
guy, I
Yeah.
mean, Melissa McCarthy said, "Hey, we can trust him. He's only 18 or 20 or whatever. He wouldn't turn his back on us," and so forth and so forth. And come to find out, yeah, he could. So everybody, even her husband, was trying to cut her out of the deal.
Mm-hmm.
So again, this world that you live in with these mobster movies, these gangster movies, it's always about, like you said earlier when we were talking about Scarface, it's always about the paranoia. You got
Mm-hmm.
to look over your shoulder. Those scenes where Melissa McCarthy has a gun in her hand overnight, just waiting to point it to someone coming into the house.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it's just it's a crazy life to live. And you know, obviously so many people have done it in the real world, and when you watch it in film, it's just like, jeez, I mean, it's just rough. So it was very effective is what I'm getting at. It was very
Yeah.
effective as a gangster, a mobster movie.
Yeah, it's kind of using the good cop, bad cop dynamic
Hmm.
into a mobster setting, which I think is unique because
Yeah.
we're so used to everybody having to be cutthroat, whereas this is using a different form of intelligence, which is not impossible for men, but I think it's a little bit more found in women, where it's just like, if we use your strength and my strength, combine them together, we can balance each other out, assuming we
Yeah.
are able to work together. Whereas you look at other things, especially if we relate it back to Scarface, where it's like, no, I don't want to work with you. I want to be on top. I don't want to be even your partner. Like, partnering with anybody was not an option in that film. It was either your
Right.
head boss or nothing. And
Right.
I think that when Tony and Tiffany Haddish's character actually have some similarities in the sense that they're done in by their own hubris and cutthroat attitude, that they have
Yeah.
burned all these bridges, that it's like, of course you get to a point where it's the point of no return
Yeah.
because you don't know any other way. So they're very similar in that way. The only difference is somebody's actually willing to offer her an olive branch, and she was
Right.
smart enough to take it.
Yeah, she was. Yeah.
But and that's why Melissa McCarthy is my favorite character in this film. And I've
Hmm.
said this, I cannot count how many videos I have said this, where I love a film that is capable of showing that maternal instinct is a strength, not a weakness,
Mm.
because it is. We have
Yeah.
so many films and stories where it's like, yeah, a mother will do anything for her children. So why do you keep saying that a woman who has kids or wants to be a mom is weaker than everybody else. I'm like, yeah, you carry kids for 9 months and see how you do. But she does seem like she's, just the housewife, that's all she is. But she has
Yeah.
ties in the community. She's born into it because that is her mom's people. And
Yep.
her dad is always pointing that out. And he's like, that's your mom's people, not mine. And she's just like, yeah, they're family. What's
Right.
the, she doesn't look, she sees the bad, but she dismisses it because that's what you do for family.
Yeah.
And the husband is the breadwinner. It's the traditional roles. She stays at home, takes care of the house and the kids, and he does all the other stuff. And then
Right.
suddenly he's gone. And she has no choice but to either come up with something because she can't get work. And for her, it's
Hmm.
not about herself. Tiffany Haddish is very much everything is about doing for herself. But Melissa
Yeah.
McCarthy's character, she's trying to provide for her children. That was her first goal. That's why she did it. It's, I need to do something for them or they're going to starve to death. It's very
Right.
simple. It's like, yeah, I'm willing to become a mobster for my kids. Yeah.
Yep.
That's fine. It's like, it's just great. We're just having a mob meeting at morning drop off. It's all good.
And she tried to get a job, she
She
tried to
did.
be straight, she went out to get a job, and homeboy looked at her and said, most employers, they're not looking to have, a mother with kids, they need someone they can rely on, and blah, blah, blah. He was just being a dick,
Mm-hmm.
and so you could really buy into why she made those decisions. And I agree, man. Melissa McCarthy, she knocked it out of the park. I mean, I enjoyed her character so much in this movie that I would have been up for seeing, a continuation of her portraying this character, or even if she ever did another movie where it's, some
Mm-hmm.
similar themes. But, it's funny, a lot of comedians, and we've seen this over the years, a lot of comedians are able to portray great characters in
Mm-hmm.
other genres other than comedy.
Yeah.
And it's so great to see it. And it's funny how people, they still get so surprised at it. I mean, you look at Robin Williams, you look at
Mm-hmm.
Tom Hanks. I mean, these great comedians, they can do great dramatic roles as well. So,
Mm-hmm.
and Melissa
Yeah.
McCarthy, I hope she does more of serious roles. I think she's very believable, very believable.
I totally agree. I loved watching the evolution of her coming into her own. It was never that, like, she never became somebody else. She stayed true to herself from the jump. Because, and
Yeah,
even when it got to a point where her dad was like praising her for having her husband whacked, and he's like,
yeah,
you did good because you did it for your kids, and you expect
right.
her to be like, yeah, and she goes, no, I did it for me. Yeah, absolutely, her
For
kids
me,
were the catalyst. That's what pushed her over the edge, because she would never
right,
endanger her children. Her husband
right.
did. And
Yeah,
that's a line you don't cross.
right.
But it wasn't just that. It was that her eyes were finally opening to, my husband isn't the great guy that I made him out to be.
Hmm.
He's very much a wolf in sheep's clothing, because we know Tiffany Haddish's husband, absolute asshole. He's cheating on her.
Hmm.
He's a dick. He treats her like crap. So we know not to like him.
Yep.
Elizabeth Moss' husband, he's abusive and violent. He's beaten her to the point where he's caused her to have a miscarriage. So we know we
Right.
don't like him. But
Right.
we
Right.
see Melissa McCarthy's husband, and he's loving towards her and his children.
Right.
So you think, oh, he's the nice one.
Right.
But then you realize he's only the nice one because of the dynamic that he has at home. As long as
Right.
he's in charge and the breadwinner, he's
Yes.
fine. But as
Right.
soon as he doesn't have that status anymore, as soon as his wife is the one in control, the one with the power, he becomes an emasculated, pathetic mess, and he cannot tolerate it, to the
Yep.
point he stabs his wife in the back. Not literally,
Yep.
in case you haven't
Right.
seen it. He doesn't literally stab her. You'd think so, but
Right.
that didn't happen. But, and she would never do that to him. She would
Right.
never do that. And that's the moment where her eyes open of, wow, I'm so nice, and I'm not going to stop being nice, but I need to stop being so naive because I thought you were good. I thought you were better than this.
Yeah.
I thought that you
Thought I could
would.
trust you.
Yeah, and you can't. Proving at the end of the, I'm like, yeah, we wanted to think he was a good guy, but we're like, they're Irish mobsters. Are we really that surprised?
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
But it's just great watching her come into this strength and being like this mother lion type person, and to the point where I even love that those minor conversations she has when they're in Brooklyn talking, I think the Italians, and the leader, and they have the conversation with his wife. She's not
Yes.
hating on them. She's not anti them. She's supportive. She's just
Yep.
like, you go get them. You show them that we're not just the wives. We're not
Right.
just the
Yep.
ones meant to have their kids.
Yep.
And even to the point where she is on her side of knowing you don't fuck with the kids. You don't do that.
Right.
And so she's like, do what you got to do. I'll protect
I'll
your
watch the
kids.
kids.
And
Yeah.
I know that even as gentle as she's saying that, and she's saying it with complete affection because she is a mom, you can kind of see it in her eyes of that we may not be close, we may not be family, but there is a kinship there. And I
Yeah.
understand what you're going through. And believe me, I will guard your children with my life.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
she knew in that moment she could leave them unattended with her. Anybody else, she wouldn't
Yeah.
have done it. But she just knew, no, this woman gets it. And even the fact that an Irish mobster, he's going, I would never hurt your children. He's like, I'm a father myself. I
Yeah.
would not do that. Even he's looking at the Irish guy
Yeah.
going,
Kind of like, geez,
he's
you're an
like,
animal.
no, I don't bring my kids to this shit. He's like, what's wrong
Right.
with you? Like,
Yeah.
and I like that. It's that weird kind of honor amongst thieves, even though it's
Yeah.
mobsters in this case, where he even by the end of it, they're mobsters and they're criminals and they do all that stuff. But this Irish mobster is saying, he's like, by the end of it, he's like, I made a deal with you, not with
Yeah.
him. And
Yep.
I'm a man of my word. What would it, because it's not smart business sense. He also knows that they're smart, they have connections, they know what they're doing, and they've done more than these guys have in years. So he knows
Right.
that there's a good business arrangement going on there. But he
Yeah.
also has the smarts to know that if I make deals with people and I renege on my deals and just go around killing people, he's like, I'm fucking myself over. Nobody's going to trust me or work with me. I'm ruining
Right.
my own business. So he's
Right. Yep.
smart. He ain't stupid. But just like that, I love that moment where just even this other mobster guy, he's like, I have no allegiance to this man, but I do to you. We are two
Hmm.
different circles, but we have an agreement going here. Say the word and he's axed, and she just doesn't have to say anything. She just turns her back,
Yep.
and that gunshot, like, it's genuine grief because you know she loved him, but it's kind of
Right.
like, what other choice did she have
Did
in
she
that moment?
have? Yeah.
And
Because she said, I'll never be able to trust you again, which is true. You
oh
know?
yeah, if your own husband sells you out to the freaking Italian
Yeah.
mob, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Like,
I know.
yeah, it's like, can you sign in divorce papers? It's like, they're mobsters. Divorces don't really mean shit. Plus, obviously, they're I'd say Irish Catholic, so that's probably not likely to happen. It's like divorce or murder. I'm having him
Right.
whacked. It's all good.
Exactly.
But
Exactly.
yeah, just every single character, they have this amazing evolution. Even the husbands, they're still skeezy at the end of the day, but just each one has their own small evolution of, I'm still a violent bastard. Oh shit, she
Right.
doesn't take the abuse anymore. I'm fucked. And the
Right.
other one going, haha, you always took my shit, is like, oh, she's actually biting back. I don't know how to tolerate this. And then the other husband's like, yeah,
Right.
I'm in charge. Oh crap. Now I've got to sit on my ass. And he's pathetic. Like, he shows how incapable he is of doing anything. That, when she was just at home, she was taking care of the kids, taking care of the house, taking care of him,
Right.
taking care of her parents. And
Yep.
then she becomes part of the mob, basically running it. And it's like, yeah, I can run the mob and still get my kids to school on time. That's
Yep.
how efficient I am. What did he do? Sat on the couch and slept all day, even to the point
Right.
where their life is under threat. He's still asleep.
Yep.
she's
Yep.
prepared with the gun and ready and on
And he's
alert
sleeping.
to defend the
Right.
family. And I'm like, no, you're not even the family protector. Like, that's your one job you can do, and it's free. And
Mm-hmm.
he still couldn't even do that. So, yeah, I like you. I don't understand where the hate comes from. I think that there are maybe a couple of moments where editing or storyline could have used a bit of tweaking, but
Yeah.
overall, I absolutely love the story. I love the soundtrack picked for it. It's so perfect. I think these women
Yeah.
also look stunning in a 70s setting. There's something that's so flattering to each of them. 70s is great. I think they really
Yeah.
brought the 70s to life in this film.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like I was really in Hell's Kitchen in the 70s. And
Yeah.
there was a lot of cultural accuracies I felt, and just the way these characters were performed and their story and their evolution, I just thought was absolutely amazing, to the point I'm like, yeah, more female mobster movies. That's what I want.
Right.
I
Yeah,
did.
no, absolutely. I agree. It was good. It really, really was. I was impressed. I really was.
So, out of 5, what would you give The Kitchen?
Oh, well, I think I'd give it I think I'd give it a 4.
Wow. Okay.
I think I'd give it a 4. Yeah, it was
Nice.
good. Like I said, Melissa McCarthy alone just
Mm,
was such a great character, and it was a lot of great tension in the movie, a lot of great scenes where you were wondering what was going to happen. Donald Gleason, like I said, he was great in it. The twist at the end, some shocking moments, and you still had those gangster tropes. You had those
yeah.
gangster elements that you have to have in a
Mhm.
movie like this, and you did have those in it. So I really enjoyed it. Yeah, I'd give it a 4.
I I think that that's pretty awesome that it made it up that high. I love anything that can circumvent stereotypes and tropes, but being very authentic at the same time, because this there was so much of showing how these women were treated and how they weren't going to tolerate it, but at the same time showing how the way the world viewed them, their
Hmm.
intelligence allowed them to use that as a weapon and an advantage. And I think that that speaks to women through history. So the fact that I know some women who are just like, no, that there's nothing realistic or relatable about this film, I'm like, you've had a sheltered life. Um,
Right,
because I was
right.
just like, yeah, that's kind of something we kind of naturally learn as we grow up. And if you've never been into any of those into in those circumstances, and I suppose it's not going to relate to you, but I kind of just everything felt right, and it didn't matter if I liked or disliked a character. Everything for that character I felt made sense and was what it was meant to be, and I for that reason I loved it. So it's just
Mm.
like, I don't like you, and I'm like, but I know I'm not meant to like you, so that's okay. um, but yeah, for me, it's a 4.5 out of 5. It was on my first watch, and it is on my second watch, because I think there are a couple moments, here and there that aren't great, and I think that there could have been a little bit more breadcrumbs, or they could have been fleshed out a little better in terms, so that the twist kind of and the plot reveal had more weight to it,
Yes. Yeah.
because it just kind of almost felt like, as impressive as it is, it kind of felt matter of fact when it was all being said. And
Hmm.
I felt like we could have had, if it was done differently, we could have had an almost like, not quite, but almost like Usual Suspects level reveal, where you're like, oh, damn, it was you all
Right.
along. Because
Right.
it's the
Yeah.
same principle, nobody, she was getting away with everything and you didn't know this. But so maybe it should have either been more breadcrumbs, or maybe less breadcrumbs but more structure in the story. I don't know, but
Yeah.
Yeah, I just would have, like, as impressed as I was, I wanted to feel more intensity in that reveal that I didn't quite get it. That reveal left me a little bit unsatisfied.
Yeah.
But yeah, I still think it's absolutely amazing and did not deserve the hate that it got. It deserved all the money. I don't have any money, but if I had more money, I would
You would
give it
give
to
them
them.
some money.
I'd give them to them. Like I said to my friend the other day, I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna give all my money to your movie, all $2 of it.
Right.
And I'm seriously considering sending him a $2 coin in the mail. So I think you get the joke. But yeah, I'm very glad to hear that you liked my pick. I'm very sorry that I didn't like yours, but
It happens.
it does. But it has proved the whole point of this series is that we can have different opinions and still have a civilized conversation.
Woohoo.
I know it's a foreign concept to some of you people, but it is
Right?
possible. I assure you. We just
That's
we
right.
just showed you it happening in real time.
That's right.
It's not even edited. Oh my but yeah, I have after all this talking of movies, I gotta say, loved you in your first episode of this series. I have made a wise decision and I am so grateful that you signed up for this, and I can see I've had a lot of fun in this episode, so I can see
Me
we're
too.
gonna have so much fun in more episodes.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for inviting me on. It's like, I love talking about movies and I always like hearing your takes and your videos. So as soon as you said that you were thinking about, having me on, I was like, all right, that sounds awesome. So I'm absolutely thankful and overjoyed to be doing it. Absolutely.
If you have come here from Knight's channel, then you already know about it. So I ain't telling you anything you don't already know. But if you're watching from my channel and you have not checked out his channel, then I highly recommend following the link that'll be in the description box, going over to his channel and checking it out and hitting subscribe and checking out his videos because he does a lot of conversations with other people and the movie community talking about the movies. And this man, I think he's a man. He might be a god. I'm not entirely sure. DNA results are pending. But you see that this man is very articulate. He knows how to form a conversation about movies. And I'm very interested. And I'm now saying this to you that I am very excited. This is a weird thing to be excited about, but I am excited for the moment I pick a movie that you hate. Gonna be a fun day. I want it.
It could happen.
I don't know what I'm gonna pick. I don't know what the topic will be, but I'm almost feeling like maybe I should pick something that I know I hate, even though that means I have to rewatch it, and that kind of sucks. But just so that I can watch you hate it. But I'm also very intrigued to have that situation of you hate it, I love it.
Yep.
Since we've already done the you love it, I hate it, which wasn't intentional. I didn't know this was going to
No.
happen.
No.
I'm sorry, Brian De Palma and Al Pacino.
Right. I know. I know.
And I'm sorry
Oh well.
to every film fan out there and every film bro that I have
Film bro. That's
probably committed the cardinal sin, and it'll be like
right.
spitting on your mother's grave. I am sorry,
Right.
but also not sorry.
Yes. Yes. I get you. I get you. It happens. It happens.
It does. It does. And we have no idea what the next subject will be for the next episode. Topic pending, movies pending, but it gonna happen. And we really hope that you'll tune in for the next one. If you liked this video, then you can leave a thumbs up. You can comment below, share your thoughts, and if you've seen either of these films, then also share your thoughts on those, because we will be on the lookout for those comments, and we will be happy to hear what your takes are. But I think that's it for today's episode, don't you?
I think so. I think we covered it pretty well. It was a good conversation. It really, really was.
Good. Just good.
Hey, look, I'm just being real. It was fantastic. I'll put it to you this way. And it's so funny because on my channel, as you know, we do pretty long conversations too.
Mm-hmm.
When you can have a conversation like we did about
Mm-hmm.
two movies and we keep having engaging points
Mm-hmm.
and even some common thoughts, maybe not the same exact thing, but common thoughts, that's when I know it's a really good conversation for me anyways. So I enjoyed it. I really, really did.
I 100% agree with you that it's amazing how sometimes people can have, if you went by people who's like gave a film a particular rating, and this happened in a past episode where it's just like we had the exact same rating for the film, but we still had completely different takes on the film. And
Uh-huh.
so it's like, yeah, you may see people with the same, you see a number, it's like, I gave it 7 out of 10, I gave it 7 out of 10. Then you actually sit down and talk. It's like, how do we give it the same rating? We don't think any of the same things. Film opinion
Right.
is different for everybody. We all view things differently. And I'm excited for future episodes, and I can't wait to dive into more movie talk with you.
Me too. Me too. Absolutely.
So thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode, and we look forward to seeing you in the next one. So until then, bye.